About this horrendous war need to be restated for the benefit of my honourable friends.
Simple fact. We have the rebels on the anvil and a hammer in our hands.
There is no question that our military force is far superior to that of the Americans. But we must distinguish between force and justice.
Where does this little blooded terrier spring from?
I believe he's a Yorkshire Terrier, my lord.
Madmen rather than able statesmen. Surely it is time for the fat fellow and his friends opposite to make way for others who consider the good of their country of greater moment than their own personal interest.
Doesn't he know what dangers await anyone who talks sense in his place?
Oh, I think he's equal to the dangers.
My honourable friend suggests we surrender to the revolutionaries. Revolution is like the pox. It spreads from person to person.
I bow to my honourable friend's superior knowledge and experience in all matters regarding the pox.
Why would we withdraw from America when half of the Americans are loyal to the Crown?
Less than 1 in 4 Americans are loyal. If he calls that half, I'd hate to be his wife and share half his bed.
Mr. Foreign Secretary.
Perhaps my honourable and young friend should explain to the House the difference between appeasement and surrender.
The difference between appeasement and surrender is merely a matter of time. And perhaps 10,000 more young lives wasted for no reason.
Wilberforce, the Reverend John Ramsay. Reverend. Edward Hope. And Michael Shaw, both friends. This is Olada Equiano.
Equiano? Please. You travelled far to be here?
No distance would be too great.
And this is Hannah Moore.
Mr. Wilberforce.
Who's travelled all the way from Clapham. Finally, let me introduce Mr. Thomas Clarkson.
Beautiful house. Sweet little rabbit.
It's a hare, actually. Please. So, come on. Who are they? Why don't you ask them?
Well, I hope the goose is tender. She was rather old.
I find the older I get, the more tender I become.
So, Miss Moore, you live in Clapham. I hear it's very tranquil there.
When certain issues are raised amongst my friends and I, it is anything but tranquil.
Ah, and which issues are those?
Issues regarding the making of a better world?
Better in which way?
If you make the world better in one way, it becomes better in every way. Don't you think?
Mr. Equiano, what business brings you to London?
My business in London is you, Mr. Wilberforce.
What? You wish to discuss something with me?
No. You do not want to talk because we hear that you are a man who doesn't believe what he hears until he sees it with his own eyes.
These are for the legs. is for the arms. This is for the neck. Works like so. When the slaves leave port in Africa, they're locked into a space 4 foot by 18 inches. They have no sanitation, very little food, stagnant water. Their waste and blood fills the holds within 3 days and is never emptied. These irons and chains are to keep them from throwing themselves overboard.
The chains are not unlocked until you reach the plantations in Jamaica. Around half of the slaves dead already. In the markets, they stuff knotted rope into the anuses of those who are sick to disguise the dysentery. When you reach the plantation, they put irons to the fire and do this to let you know that you no longer belong to God, but to a man.
Mr. Wilberforce, we understand you're having problems choosing whether to do the work of God or the work of a political activist.
We humbly suggest that you can do both.
You planned this.
I've seen the literature you've been reading.
You stooped to searching through my desk.
Sir William Dolben told me you'd asked to be shown round the East India docks.
So, you would use my private concerns for your own political ends?
Yes, exactly that. Surely the principles of Christianity lead to action as well as meditation.
Oh, excellent point. Allow me to meditate on it before I decide on any action.
Just think about this, Wilbur. The slave trade has 300 MPs in its pocket. It would be just you against them. But you could do it. You would do it.
Oh, stop moaning. Excuse me, sir. Do you have a penny for a boy that went to fight the Yanks and came back half a man?
Hello, Mr. Newton. It's me, William. Hello, John. How are you? Hello, John. It's me, Wilbur. I'm here to seek your... The beggar at the door assures me that I'm now old enough to call you John. You're dressing very simply these days.
I'm a simple man. I try to pretend I am a monk, but I don't have the willpower. I'm a monk Mondays, Wednesdays. You know, when I read your name in the papers doing these great things. I still see a tiny boy with his hair a mess and ink on his fingers. So, what do you want with the old preacher?
I'm here to seek your advice.
When you were a child, you used to ask God for advice.
Then I grew up and grew foolish.
And now?
Now, slowly my faith is returning.
How slowly?
No bolts of lightning.
Yeah. God sometimes does his work with gentle drizzle, not storms. Drip, drip, drip.
My friend William Pitt has declared an interest in me.
William who?
He's offering me a place in the world.
Just make sure you're in the world, not of the world.
There'll be no escape from power once I have it. I would have to see things through.
So why wouldn't you? Are you contemplating a life of solitude? Wilbur, you have work to do. Besides, people like you too much to let you live a life of solitude.
Haven't you chosen solitude?
You, of all people, should know I can never be alone.
There now.
I know what?
The other reason I came. You told me that you live in the company of 20,000 ghosts. The ghosts of slaves.
I was explaining to a child why a grown man cowers in a dark corner.
I need you to tell me about them.
I'm not strong enough to hear my own confession.
I thought time might have changed you.
It has. I'm older.
Pitt has asked me to take them on. The slavers.
I'm the last person you should come to for advice. I can't even say the name of any of my ships without being back on board them in my head. All I know is 20,000 slaves live with me in this little church. There's still blood on my hands.
Will you help me, John?
I can't help you. But do it, Wilbur. Do it. Take them on. Blow their dirty, filthy ships out of the water. The planters, sugar barons, alderman sugarcane, the Lord Mayor of London, Liverpool, Boston, Bristol, New York, all their streets running with blood, dysentery, puke. You won't come away from those streets clean, Wilbur. You'll get filthy with it, you'll dream it, see it in broad daylight. But do it. For God's sake.
Sir, I have Mr. Thomas Clarkson. Forgive me, Mr. Wilberforce was here a moment ago. I'd better go and find him.
Good afternoon.
Sorry if I alarmed you. I had this box made up in the exact dimensions of a slave berth. I thought you could use it in your practical demonstrations.
Why did you wait until your butler had left before you got out of the box?
They all think I'm mad already. As will most people in the House of Commons. When I present my bill.
Wilberforce. Conditions in Jamaica are far more brutal than I could have imagined. Many children are scalded to death by the molten lava. Others die of exhaustion or roll into the fires in their sleep. The result in the morning is a few pounds of pure, refined sugar.
Not long after I first met him, he asked me to come to the East India dock. He said there was a ship I should see. A ship he knew well.
Miss Requiano.
This way.
Thanks.
They make you lie in this space. The shackles dislocate your hip or your shoulder. You are in pain all the way around the world.
How long is the journey?
3 weeks, if the weather is good. For amusement, they sometimes hang the woman from these by the ankles to wake them. In stormy weather, they take the very sickest and throw them into the sea to lighten the ship's load.
How did you survive?
Your life is a thread. It breaks or it doesn't break. Before I traveled in a ship like this, I was a prince. In many ways, not unlike you. It was a beautiful day like no other, the last day I saw my home in Africa.
It is with a heavy heart that I bring to the attention of this house a trade which degrades men to the level of brutes and insults the highest qualities of our common nature. I am speaking of the slave trade. I know that many of my honorable friends in this house have interests in the Indies. Others have investments in plantations, others are ship owners. And I believe them to be men of humanity. I believe you all to be men of humanity. And if the wretchedness of any one of the many hundreds stopped in their ships will be brought to view, there is no one among them whose heart would bear it.
Order!
I can hardly believe my ears.
We can hardly believe your mouth.
It seems my young friend opposite has a long-term strategy to destroy the very nation that spawned it. While I was in Virginia, losing my fingers in battle with the Americans, he was busy appeasing them. Now he would hand over the riches of the Indies to the bloody French. If we didn't have slaves, there would be no plantations. Right? With no plantations, how would we fill the coffers of the king? Now, my honorable friend really believe that if we left off the trade, the French wouldn't immediately step into our place and reap the rewards?
Gentlemen, would you stop the music, please? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed our little tour of the estuary. But now our sergeant is almost over, I have a confession to make. This trip wasn't purely arranged to reward those MPs who have supported me in the past year, nor am I the only sponsor.
What's he doing up there?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a slave ship, the Madagascar. It has just returned from the Indies, where it delivered 200 men, women, and children to Jamaica. When it left Africa, there were 600 on board. The rest died of disease or despair. That smell is the smell of death. Slow, painful death. Breathe it in. Breathe it deeply. Take those handkerchiefs away from your noses. There now. Remember that smell. Remember the Madagascar. Remember that God made men equal.
All that winter, we spread out across the country, gathering evidence for Parliament. Thomas rode to Bristol, Liverpool, Plymouth, talking to men who'd worked the slave ships, ship's doctors who'd treated them, slaves themselves who'd been whipped and branded. Equiano published his account of his years as a slave. He sold 50,000 copies in 2 months. Our supporters began to only buy sugar produced without slaves in India.
Blow ships from Africa to the Indies naturally, as if the route were blessed by God. Another argument in defense of the trade is that the Newfoundland fishing industry is kept afloat by the fact that slaves in the West Indies consume that part of the fish which is fit for no other consumption.
I do feel that if my honourable friend continues to scrape the bottom of the barrel for objections, he is in danger of getting splinters under his fingernails. Now, if I may continue with my argument.
As representative of the great and flourishing commercial town of Liverpool, I must once again remind the House that we have no evidence that the Africans themselves have any objection to the trade. I have here an account by Mr. Clutterbuck, which states that most slaves in the Indies have a snug little garden with plenty of pigs and poultry. There are many poor families in Liverpool who do not have as much. Which is why, apart from a few mendicant physicians and itinerant clergymen, the ordinary people of Britain are not at all exercised by the whole issue of slavery.
My honourable friend, the member for Liverpool, seeks evidence of people's concern. In the past year, I and my itinerant clergyman friends have been gathering just such evidence. We have taken a petition calling for the abolition of the slave trade to all the great cities of this country. It has been signed by over 390,000 people. However, this petition is not yet complete. There is one more person who wishes to add his name.
Do something.
Speaker, I humbly request a suspension while we take time to examine the signatures on this document.
There is something very provoking in the dry, calm way my honourable friend seeks delay.
Mr. Speaker, will he not give way?
Is the desolation of Africa suspended?
Please, gentlemen.
Is the work of death suspended?
You bring petitions into the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, we cannot
As if this
insult
country should be ruled by the rule of the mob rather than its natural rulers.
Order!
The rule of paper reeks of rebellion.
No matter how loud you shout, you will not drown out the voice of the people!
This session will be suspended while the petition is examined.
I say to this House that there is now no reason why my bill should not be commended to the King.
And I urge my honourable friends to vote once and for all for the abolition of the slave trade throughout His Majesty's empire.
They're taking the vote.
Here's the tally.
On the Home and Foreign Slave Trade Act, the unamended bill calling for the abolition of the slave trade throughout the entire British Empire
Nose to the left, 16. Eyes to the right, 283.
Abolition of the slave trade to be passed.
Noblesse oblige.
What the bloody hell does that mean?
It means my nobility obliges me to recognize the virtue of an exceptional commoner.
When people speak of great men, they think of men like Napoleon, men of violence. Rarely do they think of peaceful men. But contrast the reception they'll receive when they return home from their battles. Napoleon will arrive in pomp and in power, a man who's achieved the very summit of earthly ambition. And yet his dreams will be haunted by the oppressions of war. William Wilberforce, however, will return to his family, lay his head on his pillow, and remember, the slave trade is no more.